champions who have consistently been part of our, who have consistently been part of our top ranking. So we'll be recognizing what I call the Hall of Famers. So these brands that have really managed to stand out from the rest and be consistently strong, and who've actually helped change the narrative of the African continent. And really what we're trying to present today is a continent that is confident, a continent that is contemporary, a continent that is collaborative, a continent that is conscious, a continent that is consistent in terms of putting itself out there, and the brands that we are proud of. We consume a lot of African brands within our household, as does Tebe, who's a conspicuous consumer of many brands and especially promoter of African brands. So without further ado, Tebe, I'd like to invite you to come and present the global results. The global results will be followed by recognition of some of these Hall of Famers, as we call them, then by a panel discussion with two Ethiopian, should I say, brand geniuses. One is Anna Getane, who's the founder of African Mosaic, and Magdala Makola, who's a renowned consultant, lecturer, and coach, who will be able to tell us a little bit about their story and how they've seen certain African brands succeed on the African and international stage. I won't name them yet. And then we're going to hear from the Executive Secretary, Clava Gedete, with whom I'm going to have a chat about what building African brand means, and really making sure that we have those local and regional value chains that are going to transform the continent. His journey is about impact and learning what they did in Rwanda, where he is from, and also what he's trying to do at a continental level. So we're here in the Africa Hall. I was here back in 2013, I believe, with Tebe, alongside Tebe, for the 50th anniversary of what was the OAU. So this is a very historic hall that was opened or reopened, renovated and reopened in October 2024. So we're delighted to be here. There's a great painting there of some of our founding fathers. And if we're here today, it's because we want to make those founding fathers proud of what we're trying to achieve. So, and that's what we want to do. Is every year we want to be launching the global results of Africa Best Brands here in the Africa Hall at the Economic Commission for Africa, because this is where history was made, and this is where history will be made. Thank you very much. Tebe, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Omar. Thank you so much. Absolute privilege to be in this historic building. Because this way, as Omar said, history was set, and we are the history makers, and that's why we are here as well, to continue to build on that history. I think it's either Kwame Nkrumah or Haile Selassie who spoke about Africa will not be truly independent until we are economically independent. And part of making Africa independent economically is by creating great brands. So I'll run you through a little bit of history of how we started our brand Africa, and how we make these decisions about these brands. So when we started, we were very clear that we want to drive a brand-led African Renaissance, and I'll speak to what that means in a minute. So 2010 is actually the first time we started this with the forum, immediately after the World Cup in South Africa in September. So the World Cup was, I think, June. In September, we followed that up. And the reason we started it, we wanted to see how we can build on the gains of the World Cup, which was a great African success story, and how we can build on those success for the rest of the continent. And as you can see, it's been attended by a range of interesting people, including Baroness Dambisa Moyo, sits on the House of Lords in the UK, a Zambian luminary who wrote the incredible book called Dead Aid, and the point of that book was that that aid is not good for Africa. And so some of the people who've been here. So let's talk a little bit about, over the years, I think you would have seen some of the cover story. This one is coming out in a couple of weeks. I think in a couple of weeks. We always follow it up the first or so weeks of June as a cover story. So the results here are all going to be in the cover story that's coming up in 2 weeks. We're very proud that we've worked with our colleagues at African Business, and we present this together for all these years I think we started together African Business in 2013 in New York on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. The program is quite interesting. As you can see in the middle, we don't go to every country. We go to a few countries in the continent, but we try and cover every region. This year we'll be in Morocco. We've been in Morocco for the last 3 years to announce the Moroccan results, and we now also announce the Algerian results. We've done Cote d'Ivoire for the last 5 years. We've done Uganda for the last 5-7 years, Kenya as well, and we've done it at historic places in all the countries. We've done it at the stock exchanges. We've done it virtually during COVID. We had all the CEOs of the stock exchanges joining us virtually. And how do we determine this? Because it's always a question. People always want to know, so how do you determine this? Do you get together in a small room and decide who is the best brand in Africa? No, we don't do that. We wanted to make sure that this is a very strictly research-based methodology, so that there's no influence of any other human error, if you will. And the process, it starts by going onto the fields. We do face-to-face, telephonic, mobile. It depends on the texture and the nature of the country. I think Ethiopia, it's telephonic or SMS-based, it's mobile-based rather. We take that and we get tons of content. We get over 150,000 brands that we go through. But when you sift them all through, we get left with 5,930 brands. So out of 150,000, only 5,900 are unique brands. So it gets you an understanding of how complicated this thing. This process takes us about 4 or 5 months just to get to sort out that data. Then we do something else that's important, and people always ask us. About Nigeria is 250 million people. Botswana is 1.5 million people. How do you compare the countries? So now we do what you call a weighted average. And the weighted average shows that we're able to compare even Botswana to a country like DRC, like Egypt, like Nigeria, which are large population countries. So that's how we normalize the data, to be able to make the comparisons easy. Then what we also do, then we talk with our individuals in the country after the results, is to check to ensure that we have a clarity around what the data, what the brands that are coming out. Then we publish the results. So today is the day, and we normally try to publish them on Africa Day or around Africa Day. So if Africa Day is on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we want to do it on Africa Day itself, which is 25th of May. Otherwise, we want to do it as a day closer. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to align very closely with the African agenda of striving for an economic independence for the continent. We believe brands will do that for us. And then we publish the results. You can see sometimes we publish them always as African Business. Then we also publish them in the different countries as a supplement. So different countries supplements. I'm hoping that Ethiopia will do a supplement sometime next year. So what we also made a decision about, or at least it's a good decision on the way, is from now on, from this year onwards, the rest of while we're still alive for the next how many years, we want to make this, the Africa Hall, Ethiopia, the home of launching the global results of Africa. So every year we want to come here, we want to build this into a much bigger program, which will be a combination of summits, Congress, and as well as the results. And we think it's right because this is the capital of the continent. This is the country and the city that inspired us to dream bigger as Africans. We work with different research companies, but the two big research companies are Geopol and Kantar. They are the two biggest research companies in the world. They've got presence almost in every country. They've got deep experience in other, but then there's other countries where they don't do business, they don't operate, like in North Africa. And in North Africa, we use GoPinion and Analysis Kantar, and because we wanted to get the results out of there as well. GoPinion and Integrate, and then Oxygen in Namibia and Analysis in Mauritius. And then between Kantar and Brand Leadership, we then do the rankings. Over 30 countries, this year 31 countries. Every single region, 85% to account for 85%, 150,000 as I've said, 8 major languages including Amharic, Arabic, so we do 8 major languages, Kinyarwanda, in Rwanda, and Swahili in Kenya and all those. We ask them 7 key questions. This is how we ask them the questions. What is your most admired brand? We don't tell them which country. We just ask them. We just ask Ethiopians, Kenyans, South Africans in every country, what is your most admired brand? And depending on the exposure to the other countries and to brands, that's how they come up. We ask them, then we say, around 2015 when we decided, or 20 somewhere, we decided, let us now be more specific. Let's ask the question, what is your most admired African brand? Because we now wanted to get closer to the African brands. Then we also ask them then there's 2 categories where finance and media, which are always low on the rank. People don't remember them. People don't remember banks, they don't remember media. So we decided we'll ask them the questions. And the reason we ask them the questions on those specific ones is because we believe that those are very catalytic categories, because media is about shaping the narrative of the continent and the different countries. Financial services is about funding our dreams. And that's for that reason that we do that. Then we asked them a new question this year: which brand contributes Is it working now? Good. We asked them which brand contributes to a better Africa. But we also, last year we started asking them which country contributes to a better Africa. So we're now asking them, which country do you think is leading the African challenge, and which brand do you think is contributing to a better Africa? Then we asked, a few years ago, we introduced the sustainability one, which brand cares for society and the environment? So those are the key questions that we see. We don't ask them 20 billion things. We don't ask them what they use. We don't ask them what they use. So you may ask the question, there's so many surveys, so many stats around there, what sets us apart? Well, what sets us apart is, first, our focus is African. We focus on Africa. Second, it's very, very comprehensive. I think I've indicated already. Every region, 8 major languages, 85% of the continent coverage. It's also empirical. This is all research and data-based. That's it. We have no interest in people's opinions around the table over coffee. We base this purely, and I think that's why, if you go to, and I'm sure it's the same in here as well, but if you go to North Africa, they don't believe in things that people buy into themselves. They don't want to buy into a study. And we don't want people to buy into a study. We want people to invest in building good consumers and good brands. And then it's independent. It's independent because it's not tied up to anybody and anything. And we also use independent research companies, so who also have their own code of conduct. We get the research companies to do the research. And then it's brand neutral, as I've said. The reason we make it brand neutral is we don't want any brand to be able to influence the cost of the outcome of the studies. You may ask, why are you measuring admiration? Why not measuring usage? Well, usage is what brand you use. Admiration is what brand resonates with you. We do it for 3 reasons. One is it's a consumer-led. It's about trust. It's about relevance and consistency. That's what admiration is about. It's also about it's about how people's values, how they identify with the brand. But most importantly, it's about connecting to them in their hearts, in their cultures, and all those. We believe that if we have to tell them, if we had to measure usage and all those, the numbers will be low. We know that. But the numbers will also be skewed by people who can afford. Rather than, and we know, for example, when you look around the continent, and I've been to every country in the continent, and we see people in the different parts of the country, in the continent, wearing Nike upside down, wearing Chanel, which are not locking, they lock in the opposite ways, because those are not the real Chanels. So from a usage perspective, it may be low from a usage, but when you do admiration, sometimes it's also about aspiration. It's the brands that they would love to have if they had money. And that's why you see such a large percentage of brands like the Gucci's and all those on the rankings, because that's what they'd love to have, and the Louis Vuittons, for example. So why brands matter? Brands matter because I put one example. Just put one example. Market capitalization of a brand called MTN is 152 billion. This was last year, 152 billion. So forget the sign. The brand value was 45%. So in other words, 45% of what drives the value of a brand like an MTN and the Dangotes and all the Ethiopian telecoms and all those is the trust that people have in the name. So it's all about the name. So brands drive the growth and also drive reputation. You can see that. You can start on a see if you can see my arrow. No, you can't see my arrow. Okay. You can see on the extreme left-hand side. You start with if it's just a plain unbranded product. Means nothing. People don't support it. They don't have trust in it. But as soon as you put brands on it, it becomes something else. The brands enable us to industrialize. So you can have an industrial brand like Dangote just opening up cement factories and not putting the name Dangote on it, or Ethiopian flying without the tail and the name. People won't trust it. But as soon as you do that, people begin to trust the brand, and when they trust the brand, they enable you to build an industry, but also to create jobs. I mean, Theo from South Africa, from Batu, and he started this brand, and he's here with us. And when he started his brand Batu, he put a name that resonates culturally in the townships, and talked about, and every time he sold one shoe, he always tells a story about how every new shoe is another job that you're creating in a way. And then, of course, we get the money taxes, and the taxes help us to do what? To do what you are seeing in Ethiopia. I always tell my friends who haven't been to Ethiopia, I said, they have not seen development and transformation in their lives. They must come here if they want to see the vision, the power of vision, or the evidence of how leadership can drive ideas. So brands are also important. And this is a particular study on South Africa, the country. When we looked at South Africa, the country, from a brand valuation, we realized that the value of the country, South Africa, 87% of what drives the value of South Africa is the brands. You could almost say the same thing about Germany, about France, about all those, because what do we know? We know the brands before we know the countries. We'll take the brands and we associate with the countries. We look at Germany and we say Germany is good because they've got Mercedes-Benz, they've got Siemens, they've got all the Porsche, they've got all those. That's how we associate. So 87%, the brands are very important. And only 13% is attributed to the place itself. They're like, oh yeah, it's Ethiopia. But let me tell you, they've got Ethiopian Airline. Over 150 bodies of metal on the air. The biggest airline in Africa, probably all the airlines put together equal Ethiopian. But the power of Ethiopian connecting the continent. If it is just plain branded, that's how you see now how the brand drives things. Of course, brands also drive soft power, because soft power is how you influence people. So what have we learned in the last 10 years? I just want to run a few lessons on what we've learned in the last few years about these brands. We've learned this much. Only 20% of the brands that Africans admire are made in Africa. We have a problem because only 20% of the brands that Africans admire are made in Africa. So in other words, there is an 80% rejection of Africa by Africans. If it's not West, the Africans believe it's not the best. So we have a challenge in our hands. And the major purpose of this is to drive that African agenda, to make sure that we're creating more and more. We don't want to see one Dangote, one Ethiopian Airlines. We don't want to see one Batu or one MTN or one Ethio Telecom. We want to see hundreds coming out of the continent. We want to see Africans feeding Africa. I think Thomas Sankara said it in the 60s. He who feeds you controls you. So 80% of us are being fed by outside, and they are controlling us through what they feed us. So where do the brands come from? 29% from the US. Nike leading. Nike, I was chief marketing officer for Nike for a long time. I don't think I did all that, but it's an interesting brand, very strong brand. 37% come from Europe, Germany leading with Adidas. 20% in Africa, MTN leading that list. There's MTN, there's Dangote, there's Ethiopian Airlines, there's Low, there's a few of them on that list, but not enough, not enough. And then Samsung from the other parts. You can see over the years, over the years, the brands that have led, but let me skip that and talk to our goal. Our goal is, I hope we'll be alive then. We'll be all alive at 2050. I hope we'll be alive. If we're not going to be alive, please, can we just mummify our bodies so that our memories are alive? But at least 2050, we want to be realistic, where I have at least half the list is made in Africa. We should say 80% made in Africa, but we're just being kind. So what have we learned this year? This year has been quite interesting. So I'm going to go through this. I'm going to go through the list in two ways. I'm going to deal with the African list, then I'm going to deal with the Ethiopian list. So first I'm going to announce how the continent looks like, then I'm going to announce how Ethiopia looks like. Trouble. Only 11% this year of the brands that Africans admire are made in Africa. So of all the brands in the continent, only 1 in 10 come from Africa. We're in deep trouble because you see the numbers are going down. Because we speak, yeah, we love Africa, but we actually don't like it. We actually don't like our continent. Most of the brands come from Europe. We also did something this year which is interesting. We wanted to see, because now this is the year of G20 coming to Africa. We then ask ourselves, and then of course Ethiopia joining BRICS and BRICS Plus. So we said, okay, let's see where the brands come from. Most of them come from G20 countries. So all those 20 countries which make up the G20, and in there I think South Africa is the only country, and this year AU is a member country. So AU collectively is now a member, and 81% of those brands come from there. And only 20% come from BRICS. I think it's a very interesting stats. So in terms of, it's aligned a little bit with the story of the continent. We then did something interesting this year. So we said, okay, now, who influences us? Who is the most influential country country that influences Africa the most? So, I was quite interested in this. If we just go by brand mentions, like who's got the most brands? America, 1. China, 2. UK, 3. France, 4. Germany. Just if you just go by the list of the brands. If you go by, so what we then said, we said, okay, the influence is not just the brands they bring, but it's also the money, the FDI that they bring into the country. So if you look at the FDI now, what they invest in the different countries in the continent, who leads? USA still leads, China leads, UK leads, France leads. So it's almost like unchanged, that list. Then we said, but wait, America is too big, China is too big. Let us index the numbers. Let's weight the numbers. Now we bring in the GDP to play, but we weight the GDP so that there's a relative comparability now, because otherwise America will just drown us. So when we weight that, look how the numbers change. The UK, probably the most effective in influencing us. France, Finland, and the US was number 10. And China went all the way to number 15. So it means what it means in this plain English is, for its size, China, and what it puts into the continent, the influence is still not as strong as the influence of the UK in the continent. Of course, now here we are, I'm speaking English to you. I'm not speaking Amharic. So that's how strong the UK is in many ways, both culturally and and the brands that we have in there. So it's a very interesting study. So what are the big brands in the continent? Nike, for the 8th year in a row. And look on the list, only one African brand makes the top 10. So then what we also did, we then said, let me look at these young people. There's these young Africans from Gen Z to Gen X to millennials and all those. Me, I was shocked. I was shocked to find out that the Gen Zs, they believe that Nike is the best brand for them. I thought they'd be naming some young up-and-coming brand. The millennials also say Nike. The Gen Xers, they say, no, Samsung. They're getting older. Melaku, why are you laughing? I think, are you Gen X or millennial? You're millennial, right? You're millennial. So you Nike. So the Gen, I think this is us, the Gen Xers. The Gen Xers, they say Samsung. Now let's go older. Boomers. The baby boomer says Samsung. It looks like the older, we're still stuck with just the phone, the communication. Very interesting stat, actually, this. And then we go to the retailers. So these are the retailers. The retailers, Zara, Bershka, H&M. So these are the branded retailers that are out there. So we split the study into branded retail and then just pure apparel. The automotives, we don't drive anything unless it's Japanese, Mercedes, unless it's Japanese, German, and a bit of, oh yeah, Ethiopia, there's a lot of Tesla. Actually, I've only ever driven Tesla here and in the US. Melako, you got a Tesla, right? Yeah, Melako drives a Tesla, drove in his car. So I've never been to a Tesla other than here in this country and in the US. In the US, I was driving this self-drive car. I was like, you know, I'm African. I'm like, this is spooky. This is witchcraft. This car is driving itself. Because we got into the car and the guy pressed in the details and the car was taking us. The car was stopping where it needs to stop. I'm like, now as an African, this is what we call witchcraft. So when it comes to consumer brands, we know them. Dangote is knocking there on Nestle. Nestle will be gone soon because we know what Dangote's got, whatever we've got. They've got the flowers and all those. As soon as the portfolio grows, we'll have an African brand here. Trade Kings out of Zambia, also knocking. Azam out of Tanzania. So it's very interesting to see. I like this, by the way. I like this because this means that Africans are feeding Africans. But you know, Nestle and Unilever have been in the continent for a long time. But this is good to see, this is a good thing. So what are the key categories? So from the key categories, I need to put on my glasses because even I can't see. Oh, I know, but technology, 18%. And somebody asked me on TV this morning, 18%, what does it mean? Well, it just means that we all have a phone, we all have a computer, we all are getting Starlink. We are all on, because that's what it is. We can't move without these things. You'll see us now when we break. We'll all be on our phones and we'll be doing things. And the second one is luxury. You're like, but they can't afford it. Yeah, but go to the flea market, they can afford it. Doesn't matter where it came from. We don't care whether it's original or not original. So it's quite interesting to see in the flea markets, all the big brands are there. Sometimes I see the Louis Vuitton upside down. Sometimes I see Nike mixed up with Adidas. One shoe is Adidas, one is Nike. It's okay. It's us. We are speaking aspiration here. So when we say here, when you ask somebody, what's your most admired brand? They're like Nike. They're like Louis Vuitton. They're like Hermes. They're like Ferrari. They're not saying that they can afford it. They just tell you, as Kanye West said, is it Kanye West or who's Beyonce's husband? I think one of them says, wait till, Jay-Z. I think they said, wait till I get my money right. And I think that's what we're saying here. Wait till I get my money right, then I'll buy the real one. From a media perspective, there's that All Africa. Remember, there's the All Africa list. We'll come to the Ethiopian list in a minute. The All Africa list, DSTV's done a good job, actually. But now they've been sold to the French. Africans. You know, every time we do something good, we get rid of it. Every time we think, we say, no, this is too good. It doesn't suit us. It must go. So they've just sold DSTV. It was announced this week that the competition authority says, yes, sell it to the French, give it to the French. Yeah, they'll do a better job. They'll come and they put some name there called Canal Plus on it. So we'll see where this goes. And then financial services, all Africa, Standard Bank. The biggest bank in Africa, in the continent, I think, present in many places. And then when it comes to Omar, can you come? Maybe you can. Where's Omar? Yeah. Okay. Actually, no, we'll do it. Don't worry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run through all of it, and then I think we'll do pictures one-on-one with everybody, so that I can just rather go through it instead of disrupting back and forth. So you can have a seat. Thanks, Omar. The number one. Then we come to apparel. Levi's, Vans. I mean, Levi's has been around forever. number one apparel brand in Africa, Batu. The young man there started this brand 10 years ago. But Theo, let me just acknowledge Theo for the great job he's done. I think how many stores do we have now? 35, 36. See, he says I mustn't shortchange him. There's one extra, 36. And you employ over 500 people. It's the number one brand in South Africa, ahead of last year, ahead of MTN, ahead of the Standard Banks. So that shows you the power of the ability and the potential of us to create great brands. And I think Theo's done an outstanding job in building one there. So, I mean, to stand next to Levi when you've been around for 10 years is incredible. And he's expanded, bringing in more apparel brands into his portfolio. Then we go to doing good for society and the environment, the African brand, MTN. MTN, Dangote, Azam. So interesting, some of the biggest brands in the continent. I love this. Contributing to a better Africa, they still think MTN does a good job. Most admired telecommunications, they still think MTN. Guess the power of scale, I guess. Over 19 countries, the biggest telecommunications, I think the biggest listed company in the continent. Then we asked another question, what's your most admired country? 6, Egypt. 7, Kenya. Rwanda. I think that's Ghana. I think that's Tanzania. Nigeria, number 2. Then there's the US in there. Then there's China in there. Then there's Morocco. The Africans think South Africa is a great brand. They think it's the most admired brand in the continent. I think there's many reasons, perhaps. You know, you saw I'm sure some of us saw us in the Oval Office during the week when there were pictures shown of a country that does not exist. Pictures of showing newspaper clips which are not from South Africa, graves which don't exist. But it is what it is. We've had a lot of attention these days as a country. Then we asked the question, what's the most admired brand? So we asked the most admired African country in 2 ways. We just look at it spontaneous and we look at it aided recall. Aided recall, spontaneous, MTN. Then we asked them spontaneous, aided recall, Dangote. So Dangote, number one admired African brand. We got a team from Dangote here who flew in this morning to join us. I think there is no bigger industrial brand in this continent. You know, when I move around the markets in Lagos and I see a picture of Aliko Dangote, the person, next to people selling Dangote flour and stuff. And I said, you see, it's how much they trust him and how much they trust the brand. And I think the most important was ask a question as well, what makes for a great African brand? And I said, it is impact, it's in transformation. It's not about how much money Aliko has got or how bigger your factories are. It is how you transform the countries. You know, I was in the middle of, was in Niger. I was in Niger, it was dusty and all those, and I saw paper bags of empty Dangote cement. People building their homes. And I said, even in Niger, everywhere, that shows you the power of transformation if your brand can enable others to grow. Most admired aviation brands, no question, no question. I would have been upset if it didn't come through. I would have said, what do you mean it's not Ethiopian? So, I mean, I'm platinum at Ethiopian, but I'm on platinum at all the 3 major airlines. So Ethiopian, South African, and Kenya Airways, I'm a platinum member there because I believe first I must fly African, I must eat African, wear African, before I can get other people to talk about the continent. And that's why I went to every single country in the continent. I know the Emirates and the Qatari will not be happy, but it is what it is. It's how life works. Here in Africa, we fly Ethiopian from Kenya. I don't know what happened there. I think I made a mistake there. I swapped them around. Telecommunications, MTN. Then we come to something we've done this year, which we believe is an important thing we should have done as a continent. We decided this year to inaugurate the first Hall of Fame. And the Hall of Fame is based on a couple of things, or three things. We look at brands that have consistently ranked among the most admired brands over a sustained period, a minimum of 5 to 15 years in our rankings, but also in other rankings. We don't just want to rely on our rankings. And we're looking at them in three ways. One, impact across the continent. Second, how they've enhanced the image of the continent. And third, how they have become a benchmark for excellence in the continent and the world. So three things: impact, image, excellence in brand building. Five brands are making it into our inaugural Hall of Fame. I'll start one, the only one, the country is South Africa. I think it's the only country that has had a nation branding agency for 30 years. 30 years, spent millions in trying to drive the image of South Africa. Over and above that, there's South African tourism, which spends 1 billion rand a year in tourism. I know that because I was deputy chairperson for the board. So, the second one is, and why South Africa? Continental benchmark for aspiration, strong institutions, cultural exports, Amapiano, Maxhosa, Bafana. Okay, Bafana is not a great brand. Let's talk about rugby. The Springboks and the democratic institution, consistently ranked 1 or 2 in many nation ranks, also independent ones, whether it's Brand Finance, whether it is a Bloom Consulting. South Africa is always either 1 or 2 in the continent. South Africa and Nigeria South Africa, Nigeria, and Egypt. There's a battle going on there about who's the biggest and the best country, and it's a beautiful brand. It's a beautiful fight we should all aim for. But I'm telling you now, from what I've seen in this country in the last, when did Abiy become premier? Maybe 7 years ago, 5 or 7 years ago. From that time to now, the transformation has been marked here. Incredible what I've seen. Then the next one inaugurating is MTN, for good reasons. 19 countries, modern telco. It's about economic empowerment, financial inclusion, digital connectivity. The top African brands generally in most ranks. I think it's the first brand I've seen in the global rankings of other surveys. They represent a proudly African brand that competes while staying deeply rooted in its local markets. The third one we're inaugurating is M-Pesa. What a story. What a story. In 2006, access to financial services in Kenya was only 5%. By 2010, it was 70%. Now it's around 80%, all because of one brand, because it enabled you to move money from a rural area to the urban area. I mean, the three reasons we're doing this with M-Pesa is, I've talked about transformation. Over 50 million users. I think they launched here 2 years ago. They launched here 2 years ago. I'm seeing them everywhere now, M-Pesa. They're in 11 countries in the continent, a symbol of homegrown innovation. When they launched, this was taken everywhere in the world as an idea. The final one is Dangote. No question. I think I've made the point. To me, one of my favorite African brands, not because they're here. I talk about it everywhere. I talk about the brands I've talked about here all the time. Dangote, most admired African founded brand. Through cement, sugar, salt, refining, it symbolizes Pan-African self-sufficiency. Dangote's investment, stretching over 10 countries, has created millions of jobs and value chains and are reshaping Africa's industrial future. Do you know, in this very hall here, in 1963, on the 25th of May, Kwame Nkrumah stood here with Haile Selassie, and they said, Africa must industrialize. From this hall here, this room, we are still talking, but at least Dangote is delivering. And that's what I think. We've got a team from Dangote, I think, not because they're here, but we should applaud them for the great work. And the final one we're inducting is Ethiopian. I've told the story of Ethiopian Airlines many times. I've been to the offices. I've seen the scale of Ethiopian, both from the cargo to everything. I spent time with all the top management at Ethiopian. And I just thought, here is an example of how you build, how you connect Africa. 130 international destinations. I think it has proven that state-owned enterprises can be profitable, they can be scalable, they can be globally admired. But to me, most important is that not everything that's run by state has to decay. And Ethiopian has shown that with a light touch of scale and a heavy touch of experience and excellence, you can build excellence out of this continent. And that's what Ethiopian Airways has done. A super success. We're in Ethiopia. We have to applaud to our great airline. And then finally, in the Africa list, we have to recognize, we want to recognize individuals. So the team gets together, the governing council gets together, the brand integrity advisory committee gets together, and they huddle and they bring in other interesting people around the table to debate and look at the data both from an objective and subjective, and ask the question, who in this country, who in this continent, who in this universe of African descent, an African who has been transformational, the example and the example of what we've been talking about since 1963, the example of how we lead, not how we greed as we see a lot of time. None other than Aliko Dangote. And Aliko Dangote, we applaud him for his extraordinary contribution to building one of Africa's most admired and most impactful brands. An unwavering commitment to African industrialization and economic integration, and inspiring a generation to believe in the power of Made in Africa. I don't think there's a better example in this continent. So every year we want to recognize that type of individual who moves the needle, who moves us closer to the dream and the goal of 1963. We sat here in 1963, some of us in spirit, and everybody else, Kwame Nkrumah, the 32 presidents who sat here in this room, they sat here and they had a goal for how we're going to transform this continent. And Aliko is an example of how we are contributing to that agenda. Let's talk Ethiopia. So it must be interesting now. It says, okay, now we've heard all these other people talk about us, because when you speak to Ethiopians, they talk about Africa and then us Ethiopians. South Africans do the same. South Africans also say South Africa and the Africans. The Ethiopians will say Ethiopians and the Africans. So now we're done with the Africans. Let's talk about the Ethiopians. Ethiopia, trouble as well. Only 13% of what Ethiopians admire is made in Ethiopia. See, that phone now is a problem. The technology is a problem. They're sitting on the phone, they're sitting on the internet, and they're like, yeah, I want to get myself a Ferrari. I want to buy myself a Louis Vuitton when I grow up. Wait till my money gets right. And then I'm going to move up. So you can see the challenge that we have as well here. The Ethiopian challenge is the African challenge. We all have a problem. It's better in other countries. I think Morocco is much better. South Africa is about 30% or so. Ethiopia, 13%. Malako, I know you and run a few brands. I know, Anna Getna, you have started an incredible brand at African Mosaic. I know, Magdala, you are teaching some of got a few young kids here. They're all in your hands. I hope that your teachings are teaching them how to think African, how to put Africa first. That the West is not always the best. Because Ethiopians, they love everything that comes from Europe, everything that comes from America, everything that comes from Asia, and they don't like much of what comes from Ethiopia. So that's our challenge that we have to putting forward to the Ethiopians, that the brands that you're building, Melaku, through your agency, the brands that you're building there, make sure that you're building Ethiopian brands, I know. So make sure that those brands come onto the list. When I see African Mosaic, some of the brands you build and the brands that come into your platform come up into it. And the talent that you are building, Magdala, that becomes that brand. What brands do Ethiopians like? They like us, Vans, Skechers, and Hello Fashion. Never heard of Hello Fashion. We like Khaki, H&M, Zara. It doesn't mean that the shops are here, but they say that's the shops I like. When I live here and I leave Ethiopia, I'm gonna look for a Zara first when I land, and an H&M. The cars are here. The cars are here, you're consuming those. I was expecting to see Tomoka. I was expecting to see all consumer brands like Tomoka and all those. They're still talking about Starbucks. I'm like, hey, in the home of coffee, we are looking outside of the world. Telkom, I told you Telkom is not our thing. Drink, we still love Coca-Cola, although here in Ethiopia we mix it with water. Half Coke, half water. That's us. It's better that way, right? We do our own Coke Zero here. Personal care, Lux, Nivea, these are all Ethiopians. Sport and fitness, Kenya next door have got a sport and fitness brand, Enda. And I don't understand why that Enda is not on the #1 athlete in Kenya, because then it will fly. He wears Nike. Technology, do you know what's so interesting about Google, Microsoft, and many of the other brands, other tech brands? They're all run by Indians globally. Because India decided they're going to find an area where they're going to be experts, which is technology. So the global CEO of Microsoft, Indian. Global CEO of Google, Indian. Global CEO of Adobe, Indian. There's like 10 of them. I'm like, hey, they've got this thing, it's theirs now. Most admired brand in Ethiopia, overall, Nike still, they still love Nike. Then we said, okay, let's now talk just Ethiopian brands. Let's now talk Ethiopian brands. Said Ethiopian brands, Kfere, Awo, Abesha, I don't know how, sorry, no, brands, no, we asked the Ethiopians in Ethiopia. They're like, us, Ethiopian. Ethiopian contributing to a better Africa. Then we asked them a question, contributing to a good Africa, so we said here in Ethiopia now, because we're now specific about Ethiopia. They said, you know what, sorry, I think I've heard it. Then we said, contributing to a better society and environment. They said, you know, we see that UN, we see that FAO, but ours is Macedonia. So that's us. Are they here? Then we say doing good for society. Then, we looked at them in two ways. We look at them in non-profit, which is what Macedonia is. Then we look at them for-profit. In the for-profit area, they said, please give us Ethio-Telecom any day. They are doing a wonderful job for society and for the people. So congratulations. Then we asked them, what's the most admired telecommunications? They says, Ethiopia-Telecom. I said, what are you talking about? There's no other competition here. That's us. Then we asked them from a media perspective, they're like EBS, nothing else. EBS is the #1 media brand here. Everybody else is a distant second. Right, the folks, they're like, yeah, you know, there's BBC, there's Al Jazeera, but they don't come close to us at EBS. Financial services, Awash. Did I see Awash there? Who is those? I saw somebody from a bank. What is it? Is it Awash? No, I can't read who it was. There's Awash, there's a Bank of Abyssinia, but they said CBE is where it's at. So the CBE is everywhere. They take all my money there when I arrive at the airport. $60 just to come and say hello to Ethiopia every time. Great brand. Financial, Melako is in front of you as well. Can you see it? It's right in front of you on the screen. the most admired Ethiopian brand to close? Not Abesa, not Kofere. And I think that is probably my last brand. I wanted to finish off with a number one Ethiopian brand, and it is Ethiopian. I like that Ethiopian is Ethiopian. So thank you so much for coming through. So we're gonna do two things. All those that I've called, we've got all. I think I'll start off with the lifetime and the Hall of Fame. We've got all their beautiful trophies. I'm going to ask somebody to help me that side. I don't know who's going to be. And I have one of the young students. Who's a student? You too, right? The young students, I'm going to ask them to help me there. So I'm going to call everybody one-on-one just to join me there. We shake hands, pass on, and that's us. So, or do you want to do question and answers first? Let's do quick Q&A if there's questions. And then maybe we can just close with handshakes, and then I think we're going to have Mr. Gatsete is going to come through and address us. No questions? Let's do the pictures. I can't remember the names. The names. Want to pull them out? Yeah. I think it's true. I think you start with the Hall of Fames.
The Lifetime Achievement or Hall of Fames you want to start off with?
Lifetime Achievement and Hall of Fame.
Okay, so we're going to be presenting the winners as described in Tebe's presentation before our panel discussion and our keynote as well. So you said lifetime, we start with Lifetime Achievement. The Lifetime Achievement will be Aliko Dangote. Don't worry, the team is here to receive the award on his behalf.
Beautiful trophy for...
Yeah, we want the whole team for the Lifetime Achievement as well. We'll take multiple pictures. So this is the Lifetime Achievement that, on behalf of for Aliko Dangote. Okay, so we've got a team from Nigeria and also the team from Ethiopia representing Aliko Dangote and the Dangote Group. So Aliko Dangote has got the Lifetime Achievement for his contribution. But Aliko Dangote has got the Lifetime Achievement for his contribution to building what is probably the most recognized African brand, not only in Africa but globally as well. The brand has also built on his amazing industrial achievements as an industrialist in Africa and continuously challenging the way things are done and working to transform the continent. Okay, congratulations, Mr. Aliko Dangote. And then next, there's a Hall of Fame. We're going to recognize 4 different brands here that have consistently performed over the past 15 years. And brands really that we all recognize as Africans, that we're proud as Africans, that have been consistent. I think one word that Tebe will, in one of his books that he's writing, to have a strong brand, you need to be consistent, not just in your messaging, but also in terms of your performance and in what you're doing. So the Hall of Famers will recognize 4 brands, and the first one is Dangote again. So if we can have the team to receive this award. Maybe we've got Dangote for the Hall of Fame Brand of the Year. The Hall of Fame again, yeah? We can have the team?
We gave both of them already.
Yeah. You gave both of them. Okay, fantastic, okay.
The next one is Ethiopia.
Ethiopian Airlines then also. Okay, in the Hall of Fame, there's a brand that if you go to international conferences and people look at African success stories, and this is global references to this brand, and where Africa's led, it's M-Pesa, so mobile money. I think Africa is a global leader in mobile money, and M-Pesa has been recognized as one of Africa's leading brands. So again, M-Pesa is featured consistently in the rankings, and as I said, it's often quoted as possibly the biggest success story that's come out of the continent in terms of what technology and how technology can transform lives. And the fourth Hall of Famer, the fourth Hall of Famer is MTN, which is, they're not here, but we should recognize them as well. They're, again, an amazing brand in the telco sector. MTN, I believe, is only 30 or 31 years old. They celebrated 30 years last year. And really, they have managed to, again, show how technology is able to transform lives, transform livelihoods. And really, they are an amazing brand in Africa and one of the most admired as well. Okay, so you want to go to the Ethiopian brands? No. Okay, the most admired African brand is Dangote again. Okay. In this order? Yes, that's what I've ticked. Okay. So the most admired African media brand, as Tebe said, is DSTV. So congratulations, DSTV. I was also assured. DSTV in many African households, but also creating African content that is reaching other parts of the world in terms of telling our stories. But they've invested in a lot of African content and African storytelling, which is something that's extremely important. And so here we've got apparel brand, most admired apparel brand is Batu. So we saw that fantastic image that you portrayed on your slides.
What you say? I'm not supposed to be walking the surf, but I don't deserve to live a free life. Well, I know
okay, so what we've also got is we've got the most admired non-profit brand doing good for society and the environment in Ethiopia, which is Macedonia.
Could you be guilty for being a little bit different from the rest? Come on now, people, put yourself.
So we're here in terms of the most admired brands in Ethiopia. So Macedonia is the most admired non-profit brand doing good for society. Okay, so we've got the most admired Ethiopian brand doing good for society and the environment. Okay, no problem. Okay. So this is the third award then of the day, okay. admired Ethiopian media brand. Admired Ethiopian media brand, EBS TV.
And I think that brings us to the end of those who are here. This will become a permanent home for this. So next year, you'll know long, you have a whole year in advance to play the German and Malaysia. The locals are not traveling, and everybody else is here for next year. So congratulations and thank you so much.
So for the live stream, we couldn't hear you.
I was saying that next year, from next year, this is going to become the permanent home of the global brands in Africa, because this is the place where we started the conversation about industrialization and about economic independence. So it makes sense that we are going to do this from this place. We'll mix it up with a bit of conferences, a bit of summit, to just sit around and talk, not just talk, but also celebrate in the end. So that is it for next year. We're all coming back here. We're going to eat, we're going to learn, we're going to celebrate. That's us next year. And, we'll be alive. We'll all be here. I don't know about you, but I plan to be here in all my glory. So thank you. So we've got the Hall of Fame picture, a certificate, and the Lifetime Achievement Certificate as well. And if you want to, you must take those along.
Yeah, we've
so
now got a panel discussion.
We're going to have a panel discussion just to reflect on the results, particularly from an Ethiopian perspective and a global Ethiopian perspective. I'm going to leave this now to Omar.
So if I can call upon, we're running a little bit late, so I'm going to rush things a little bit, but if I can call upon our two panelists. So Makadela, if you can join us, who's, as I said, an entrepreneur, entrepreneur and marketing specialist, a lecturer and a consultant, and also brand specialist. Thank you, Magdala. Thank you for joining us. And we've got also an entrepreneur who's going to be joining us, and if you can join us, and I'll make the introductions on stage so we don't. And Tebe is also going to join us on stage. We're going to not necessarily go through the presentation. The presentation will be sent to everyone here and everyone who's registered and seeing us online. But we're going to talk about branding in general. Thank you. So as I said, we've got Tebe Kalafin, who needs no introduction. We've got Magdala Mekuria, renowned consultant, lecturer, and coach. And we've got Anna Getane, who's the founder of African Mosaic. She came back to Ethiopia to set up a fashion brand, African Mosaic, that's focused on three elements: sourcing locally, manufacturing locally, and developing talent in Africa, so locally and beyond. Fashion cultural enthusiast, a humanitarian, and acclaimed former international model. So thank you for being here with us. So maybe we'll start with, we saw a number of brands mentioned, African brands. One of them is Ethiopian Airlines. So Ethiopian has got it right in a way that no one could have foreseen, really, 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's I don't know how old the brand is, but it's actually at least 50 years old, I believe. But how do you think they did it? Maybe we start with Magdala, who's the lecturer who studies these things. So how have they achieved this, and something that no other African airline has done either?
Thank you very much. First off, I would love to say thank you to Tebe for making sure this kind of things actually happen and for the consistency that you have managed to do. And it also gives me a great pleasure seeing an Ethiopian brand in the top 100. Taking that into account, one of the things that I believe accounts for the position that the Ethiopian Airlines have in the top 100 amounts to the strategic positioning it has from the very beginning. In the last 20, 30 years, if you've seen the Ethiopian Airlines, there is a significant shift from just connecting Ethiopia to Africa, now connecting Africa to the world. And that strategic thinking is something that actually positioned it as a most admired brand in Africa. One of the things that we have to also consider is the way how we perceive and how we communicate our brand in a global perspective. Majority of the brands that we have, we communicate it within the local context, but Ethiopian Airlines has managed to do a different route, making sure that they are positioned as an African brand, not just as an Ethiopian brand. And that is one of the things that I take as a critical point. The second one is the ability to live the words that they promise. And that's something that every brand and organization should actually consider, making sure whatever we say, are we able to deliver it? And when the Ethiopian Airlines says we're connecting Africa to the world, they are actually making it in action, making sure that there are routes designed that transcend Ethiopia and making sure that the connection of Africa is possible. And that's something that I personally am proud of. And as an Ethiopian, this is something that we should celebrate. But as an African, it is also something that inspires other brands to follow us suit as well.
Thank you. So when I look at airlines, we've seen a lot of airline projects on the continent. And one thing maybe we don't speak enough about when we're talking about Ethiopian Airlines is that it's a lot of hard work. Airlines is small margins, which mean extremely tight management controls. And as you said, delivering. So delivering on your word. So yeah, fantastic story, and to be able to deliver on your word, you've got to have a vision, you've got to be bold, audacious, and this is why I'm going to come to Anne now, because brands are about confidence, about audacity, but also about making sure that you can deliver on this vision. So I want to know, really, as an entrepreneur, have you had the support from government, from banks, from investors, or as they say, from friends, family, and fools, to support your enterprise? How have you gone about it? Because it is actually not easy to build brands, and we'll get to Tebe in terms of he can tell us what is needed. But you do need that vision, you do need that audacity, and also you do need that perseverance to support local enterprise, which is what you're doing.
Once again, I want to say first, thank you, Tebe, for bringing this home, bringing this to Ethiopia. I think moving forward, this is going to be an incredible spotlight that we're going to be having on African brands. Thank you to the team at Africa Brand 100 as well. So my name is Anna Getana. I just wanted to maybe give a little bit more intro on what I'm trying to do here in Ethiopia. I do run a fashion company, but beyond that, I came back home because I was determined that you can actually build a viable and a successful fashion company that is rooted in Africa, that sources, designs, and develops talent in Africa. And it's a bold move indeed, because obviously my starting point and my entry point to fashion was Europe. So obviously I was exposed to high fashion, and I understood what was involved in that, and it was all really about branding and positioning. So in my role today as creative director of African Mosaic, and also as the editor and founder of AM Edit, a bilingual fashion, digital fashion magazine, I am really I'm heavily invested on how Africa is branding itself. Because when I say I'm an African fashion designer, I have to make sure that I'm able to prove what I'm trying to do here. Obviously, as we mentioned, Ethiopian Airlines, if I were to say I am starting another Ethiopian or an African airline, we do have the legacy of Ethiopian Airlines to build on. But when it comes to African brands, there are only very few that are really carrying the torch forward. So it is an industry that has huge potential, and that's what keeps me going and excited every day, because we understand that the creative industry in Africa is there, it's present, it's thriving, but it's the lack of opportunities, and it is the lack of opportunity that has really held us back from really building strong fashion brands. And what I say about that is the ecosystem that we're trying to build here at Africa Mosaic, when we say the proper schooling, fashion schooling, or access to funding, access to machinery, that we need to be able to build fashion brands. It's not about logos, it's not about aesthetics only, but it's being able to tell our story in our own way. Do we have enough fashion magazines? Do we have enough influencers? Do we have enough people wearing Africa-made clothing to be able to endorse the products that we're doing? So it's a long journey, and I've been on this journey for over 20 years now, 20 plus years. I'm confident, but I know that you have to be very ambitious, you have to be very bold, you have to be persistent. It doesn't happen overnight. Ethiopian Airlines is, I think, 74, 75 years old. Hopefully we don't have to wait that long, but I think we are slowly beginning to see incredible Africa-made fashion brands that are coming into the scene today, but it does involve a lot of support from government, from private sector, and also the change of mindset. As we were saying earlier, we are not wearing enough made in Africa. We do want to understand that there are some challenges. We have to be forgiving. It's not always going to be perfect overnight, but there are incredible designers based here on the continent making incredible, beautiful clothing, but it's not endorsed locally. And so until we start actually endorsing our local brands, we're not going to start seeing brands that are going to really break into the international fashion scene.
Thank you. And what's interesting, actually, from what you've said, and when I look at an example like Dangote, so Dangote is not just building a cement plant or building a petrochemicals factory. He's actually having to build a port. He's actually having to build a road. He's actually having to build that whole ecosystem, which is similar to what you're doing, because you're not just building a brand, designing clothes and getting someone else to actually manufacture them. You're building a whole value chain in terms of that local manufacturing capabilities and capacity, but also a fashion show to be able to showcase your brand and others, and also a magazine, again, to showcase talent to the wider world. So you're having to do a similar thing to what Dangote is doing in industry in fashion. So integrate things vertically and horizontally at the same time. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. When I became a fashion designer, I never thought I would actually own my own fashion factory. I thought I would be a designer and then outsource my manufacturing. So when I moved to Ethiopia, I realized that there are not many manufacturers that focus on small to medium-sized manufacturing. So I had to go out and build a factory myself. And then we needed the platform. How do we promote the work that we're doing? So we had to organize our own fashion shows, which led to building the annual African Mosaic Fashion Festival. And then we realized, but we don't have talent. Where are the skilled workers that are going to work within the factory? So we went to the schools, we realized there was a gap. So we developed the African Mosaic Fashion Incubator Program, which is a free program that we provide to up-and-coming talented designers, providing them upskilling, business of fashion training, as well as developing their own collection and developing their own line. So yes, I've had to spend most of the 10 years that I've been on the ground really building the infrastructure, because it's not about logos, it's not just about doing aesthetics, but it's being able to, if we want to stay true to what we came here to do, which is sourcing, designing, and developing talent in Africa, we have to make sure that the infrastructure and the ecosystem is there for us to be able to continue growing. So. Thank you.
Thank you. Magdalena, if I can come to you, what we're seeing, and Ethiopia is a fascinating story. So I've been coming here for over 20 years, and we've seen the transformation of Addis Ababa as a city. We've seen, let's say, a Chinese-style model of development whereby they're not looking over the next election cycle, but over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years in terms of economic transformation and development. But what we're now seeing is opening up of the Ethiopian market in terms of telecoms, in terms of financial services. And is this a good thing or bad thing for local brands, do you say, the opening up of the economy? How do we go about it to make sure that we also protect our nascent and thriving local companies?
I think Before addressing that question, maybe if I could give a bit of a context in terms of how we are addressing the issue of brands in Ethiopia. The first thing is, whenever we're thinking of addressing brands, we could see it from three different spheres. The first is from the organization perspective, the companies that actually bring the brands to the market. That is something that we should really work. Whenever we build brands, whenever we build our organizations, what is the strategic direction that we are trajecting our business to? Are we just simply thinking of addressing the local market, or are we thinking of in a bigger picture? So that's the first thing that I see companies should do first. The second is from enabling environments. The enabling environments, it goes from the government frameworks that we have, whether there is the ability to access global markets or otherwise. That's again another aspect that we should consider. So when we open the market, it presents an opportunity for Ethiopian brands to go broader in scope, but at the same time it also brings a challenge if we're not ready for it. So the first thing that I always say is make sure that your brand is strong enough to withstand any of the challenge that the Western brands could bring. So that's something that we should work on. The third aspect that I usually want to highlight is how are we positioning our brands across the country and beyond. We could see it from two perspectives. I, as an academician, one of the things that I always find challenging is whenever I teach a course in branding, I also pose this thing to my students. I say, the best way that we could build Ethiopian brands is by consuming them, because that's one of the things that we mentioned earlier. 15 years ago, a student asked me this basic question, and she said, "What Ethiopian brand are you wearing now?" And that goes to Anna's question as well. What brand am I wearing? And that was a very critical question. I had to dig deeper into my clothes, and I have to find a t-shirt that was made in Ethiopia. But then that was a mission that I had, making sure that there is at least one bold Ethiopian brand on me. So ever since then, whatever shoe that I wear is an Ethiopian made, and proudly, I'm having an Ethiopian brand here as well. Now, how are we promoting it? That starts there. The second one is the kind of media dynamics that we have in terms of promoting Ethiopian brands. Unfortunately, this disheartens me when I say this. I run a radio show, and there are times that we talk about brands, the experiences that companies have. Mentioning a local brand in programs is considered as a taboo if they are not part of the sponsoring companies. And this is something that I have pleaded to the broadcast authority as well. The best way that we could position Ethiopian brands across Ethiopians first, then to the global perspective, is when we are bold enough to talk about them. If it is good, why not? If it is bad, it's also going to be a room for improvement. And I truly hope, this is something that I see a lot of media personalities here, is something that we're going to promote. Whenever we dress up, and we should boldly say, this is the product that I've used from this and this company. Now, saying this, the essence of opening the Ethiopian market, it started with the telecom company, and now it is moving to the financial sectors. The best way that Ethiopian brands go beyond Ethiopia and become an African brand is one, when we strategically design our brands to fit into that perspective. It should be part of our strategic agenda in terms of positioning it better. That's the first. The second is making sure that we are open enough to learn from what the other companies in Africa, the top flight brands that we have seen in the top 100, what are they doing and what could we learn from them? We've seen Dangote being such a persistent brand across Africa and in the top 100. What could we learn from them and how could we adopt it? And it's not going to be limited for the corporate organizations or for the bigger ones. What could we learn for the smallholder businesses as well, for startups? What are the kind of things that we could utilize to make them go bolder? Unless we do this, I always say opening up the market becomes a challenge. We have strong financial institutions that function quite beautifully in Ethiopia, but once the doors are open, if we are not working on them in terms of personalizing them, humanizing them, so that we could feel so much connected to them beyond the service, but in terms of the different activities that they do, we are in challenge in protecting them.
So if we're here today, it's because of the graciousness and generosity of the Economic Commission for Africa. So we're really honored, delighted, and humbled to have His Excellency Glave Ketete joining us today. He's going to be joining the panel, if I may ask you to, Excellency, before giving us the closing keynote. His Excellency was an Honourable Minister of Infrastructure in Rwanda, also Honourable Minister of Finance in Rwanda for many years, and before that at the Central Bank, and before that I believe at the UN. So you've seen it, and you've also seen the transformation of brand Rwanda, let's say, over the years. You've actually actively worked on it. Today, if we think of a success story on the continent, we think of Rwanda, success story in agriculture, in tourism, in sports. So maybe tell us the inside story, given that you were instrumental in helping support local enterprise, attract investment by creating that regulatory framework that helps industry thrive. So how do you go about making a success story such as Rwanda, and a transformation of an economy, and also a thriving sector, as I said, in agriculture, in tourism, in sports?
Thank you very much. I don't know what you prefer, whether you come pan on the leave because I have another meetings to go to, or whether I make an opening statement, because my time here is very much limited.
Okay.
Yes, it's very much limited. I just wanted just to say, because if I were to tell the Rwandan story, that would be a very long one. You don't know sometimes where to start, and even how they do things is quite a different one. But if I just would give you an example, maybe that would give you an idea on when you say branding, is we started a long time ago in terms of tourism. And we identified a country that is landlocked, that required to do things differently. Where do we focus? Do we focus on agriculture? Do we focus on other natural resources? Do we focus on services sector? And within the services sector, we chose two areas, which are complementary. I would say maybe three, because the service sector was being moved by tourism. We chose tourism. And then we chose technology. We chose financial sector. In tourism, we didn't have a 5-star hotel. So we had to do things differently. We had to break the IMF program. We transformed one almost a no-star hotel to a 5-star hotel. The first meeting in that one was the Africa peer review mechanism to host that one. Then we built another one and another one. And the third one was to host the African Union, which also had a 5-star hotel, but also a convention center. But how we built them, it was so unique because we were looking at the tourism. Because building tourism is not just hotels, but we wanted to host conferences. And then we had to sit down and say, well, when you talk of tourism, what do we understand? Then we say, well, first of all, you need an airport, because you have to bring in people. And we had an airport, but we established a national airline. And then we said, let's build another airport, which is 2,400 hectares of land, which is going to become like a whole regional hub. And linking that one to the hotel, to the convention center, to our natural resources in terms of the people coming to see the beauty and other areas, mountain gorillas, safari parks and other things. That one was okay, but we sat down and said, well, is this all? We said, no. We needed education tourism. That's why we established the Africa Center for Mathematical Sciences, Carnegie Mellon University, Africa Leadership University, and so many others to attract people It was deliberate. We also said we needed health tourism, meaning reorganizing ourselves so that we don't have to send people to India, to Europe, to South Africa, to Kenya. We wanted to become a hub. And within that one, we said we cannot do it as government alone. We had to also include the private sector into that process. And even within government, we had to restructure. Everybody knows that when the government is giving money on health, it gives it to the Minister of Health. In our case, it was different. For anything on technology for health services, it was the Minister of ICT. For infrastructure construction, it was the Minister of Infrastructure, not the Minister of Health. For any education needed, it was the Minister of Education, and so forth and so forth. So that this time, when you look at the Minister of Health, it's not just the ministry itself. Health is distributed in many parts. And then we said, this is not enough. We needed to add sports tourism. That's when we started the whole entire infrastructure. For the normal football, we had a convention center. We brought in all these other programs on the whole entire ecosystem of sports. After getting it, then we had to link with other big brands globally. You had Arsenal, another one in France, and now going to many others, so that these people can be able to promote what we do within the context of sports tourism. So, and there are many areas which are still coming just to brand into the whole thing ecosystem of tourism. And this made a total transformation, a different area. But also knew that people who are coming in terms of tourism, they need high-level internet connection. So, meaning every hotel, it was a must. Every school, it's a must to have the technology, because for every school, you have to provide the road, water, electricity, and also the IT services. And then for all the hotels, it was a must. You must have internet access because people can come and stay. We also had to reform the housing estates so that people can access the land, can buy the land freely, easily, for those who want to stay. And then we had to provide the financial services because people may need to spend their own money, and we wanted them to spend as much as possible. So it was a whole ecosystem of how to bring the people to the country, how to maintain them to stay longer, how to provide as many products as possible, and so that when some people are leaving, others are coming in for different purposes. And that's how we wanted to bring the entire world to Rwanda. So that was done deliberately. It requires for people to think through and then do things progressively. And that way then you build a brand. Like now, every week in Rwanda, there is something on sports. It doesn't matter what it is, but there is sports. And then they combine it with cultural activities. That's why you'll find most of the Nigerian singers will be in Rwanda, the Kenyan one, the Tanzanian ones, the others, so that you combine the games, but also the others who are known. Sometimes dressed in a funny way, but they have huge clients. You'll see them, they attract more people than the head of state can attract. These are known people globally. And they come and they compete from different parts of the world, and there is a whole marketing, there is a whole communication behind it to show them. And other things also is to bring in the celebrities. Pick those that are known, and then that becomes another big brand. They bring, someone, a great singer from United States, Beyonce, this and that, an actor, Ben Affleck, this and that. Whoever comes has so many people behind them. So in other words, we are trying to bring in all kinds of people, young, old, in the different areas. And then we had to establish to say, well, how do we support them? We used to have the Ministry of Youth and Culture. The Ministry of Youth has now combined all the other entertainment areas in terms of really supporting that. Then you had the Rwanda Development Board that is really geared to make sure that we need business. And that's the best way that we could be able to do that. So, but the whole thing is coming to what we call tourism. And if you see the contribution on GDP, it kept going up like this. Because, and you keep monitoring it. How come we are slowing down? How come we are not going up? What are the constraints? How do you adjust as you go? How do you know this time be able to give other information that give a good name to our continent, to our country? So this is deliberate. So the planning process is the most important. What do we want? And then follow through all the way. And once you do that, slowly by slowly you see things coming together. And then definitely that's where success comes from. This is just another example. If I went to other areas, I can be able to spend another day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Excellency. So here, we were looking back at your experience in Rwanda. Now I want to look forward in terms of your projects here at the ECA. I think one project that's very close to your heart is developing or strengthening local and regional value chains. So when I look at China today, I mean, China 20 years ago was manufacturing goods. We weren't even sure of the quality of those goods. Today, when you think of electric cars, you think of China. When you think of batteries, you think of China. They're leading the world. When you think of critical minerals, you think of China. So you're involved in a number of projects where you're trying to develop regional value chains. So how are we going to do it so that in 20 years' time, we're thinking Africa?
I was with the ambassador of China this morning. He's leaving. He's been here for over 3 years. And of course, we discussed what was going on in China. In Africa, it's a different story, and sometimes it's very difficult to know where to start. Because in this very hall in 1963, when people came together, our leaders, and they say, we want a new Africa. We want a new united Africa. And really had ambition. If you see from 1963 to today, how much united are we in terms of really making sure that the aspiration that they had is achieved? And that's why there is a big problem. What we needed, what was in place at the time, after the Second World War, was a system of how the world would look like. Means there are some rich countries that are saying we also need to assist. Let's put together financial institutions together. They went to San Francisco. They said 2 institutions. One is the regulator, IMF, another one is the bank, World Bank, that we put in money, we get shareholding, and then we can support the countries which are rich, middle-income country and others that have problems, including Europe at the time for reconstruction, but also others which are poor, like Africa. We have the IDA. We have a small portion for them. If there is a problem of conflict, then at that point, we have humanitarian assistance. We contribute and we put a mechanism in place. And if there is any security, we also have peacekeeping. They designed the program. They designed the whole structure. Okay, Africa kept getting aid. Well, somehow we thought it was permanent. We kept getting more aid, more aid. We never put in our mind that at the end of the day, we have to depend on ourselves. And that's what has kept us way, way behind. Because there is this money, if you are poor, they give you aid, but also take some loan. Someone is a regulator who is going to help you out. Now we have realized that our economies have grown. That small money is no longer there, that is concessional in nature. It led to the debt levels, which are now completely out of control, $1.86 trillion for the whole entire continent. And now we find ourselves completely locked in. That port is now too small to give us, to feed us all. The debt levels are high. There is a significant impact on climate. And now we find ourselves here. Now, and then this is the time we are coming back to go back to where our leaders was talking about of United Africa. Yes, we have now a vision, 2063. We have a 10-year program. We have the 7 moonshots. We have a market for Africa so that we can trade among each other. Now, this market is a solution because for us to be able to move forward, it is a trade and investment. That's the key. It's not aid. It's trade and investment. How do you organize it in such a way that There has to be investment from inside and investment from outside. How do we make it attractive? How do we de-risk so that private sector and others can invest, not only as government, but also as private sector? They have more money, and there's something for everybody. Secondly, how do we make sure that we don't export unfinished or raw materials to the rest of the world? Because this is like exporting jobs. It is actually almost donating to the rest of the world, if I may use that word. So what was very important is, how do we go all the way from production to the final product, where you have an industry, where you have added value, and you produce products which have international standards and be able to compete on the market to export. That means from production to the industry, jobs are created, and then value is added up the final product. Then at that point, you're retaining more than 90% of the value of the product. How do we do that? And that was the value chain. That's why you have identified 94 of them across the continent. It could go from agriculture, livestock, beef, like here where they have leather value chain, beef value chain. You could see so many countries, from Botswana to Namibia to Chad to East Africa to so many of them. Cocoa, cotton, tea, so many products, 94 of them. And said, what if we took these products and did it from production? If it is minerals, like the one for DRC and Zambia, which now we are working on a roadmap so that people will know who does what, they have the minerals that are making all these technologies that we need. Instead of exporting it for someone to do it elsewhere, why can't we just throw it up? We know where we dig these minerals. We establish a place, a special economic zone or industrial park where they can be processed. We have the logistics that are carrying them to this place, provide incentives so there will be industries, add value, so that instead of exporting these raw materials, all the products can be made there. How do we create the interlinkages? Like this one for the battery, where we are linking with Morocco, and say, well, you have the capacity here. We will do this part. Once it is finished, then you'll continue with this part. And then because you are specializing in the automobile, then this will be very important for you to have electric vehicles. I'm just giving you an example. And another one, and another one, and another one. But to do that, we need private sector to come in. For the private sector to come in, they will say, well, this place is risky. Even if you see all the ratings, the place is not good. And that's why saying we're working together, Afrexim Bank, the ADB, the World Bank, IFC, how do we come together to say, well, you have the guarantees. How do we use these kind of guarantees so that we de-risk, and then we tell the private sector, by the way, you can get cheap money because there's no more risk. Or whatever is left is minimal. And there we can divide on saying, what do you do? What does the government do? What does the private sector do? So that you don't have to invest even in infrastructure, which is going to stay there even when you leave. So that we can package things together. And that's the job that we are doing as ECA, to package, so that we bring all other stakeholders together on the table and say, well, for you, we want you to do this, you to do this, so that we can now have the whole regional value chain working smoothly. And that's what we are trying to do. If we do it to as many products as possible, now everybody will now get used to say made in Africa. Because it's not made in Africa halfway, it's made in Africa to the final product that we put on the market. And here there are many products. We are just saying we need to start somewhere so that we can show examples. That's why every year we have the Africa Business Forum, so that we can showcase what has been done in Africa as examples that is possible. Next year we'll have another one, the following year we'll have another one, and we put pressure on ourselves to say, well, this time what do we show that's different from last year? And how has it been done? So for us, this is some work that we take very seriously, among others. Yes, we help the member countries on the macroeconomic stability, macroeconomic framework. We help them in terms of domestic resource mobilization. We help them in terms of climate. We help them in the planning and so many other areas. But we are entering the area of private sector. Because at the end of the day, this is what makes more sense. That's where attracts more money. That's why it attracts more investments. And this is where you can facilitate trade within the continent, but also outside the continent. That's why you're looking at all the infrastructure connecting Africa, but also the others connecting Africa with the rest of the world. Last week, I was in Togo. I visited the port there. And we are looking at others, from Tangiers to Southern Africa to West Africa, to everywhere, trying to see how do we use all these ports to help us to move goods and services cheaply, imports and exports. So there is quite a lot that is being done. The time is short, but I think for us to be able to continue and export in a more sustainable manner, we need to first have the Made in Africa. Made in Africa, you can't do it without having the regional value chain that can be replicated from one region to another, because Africa is rich in terms, is endowed in terms of natural resources. So let me stop here. I could continue, but I don't have much time. Thank you.
Okay, Excellency, how do you want to go about it? Do you want to make the closing remarks, or do you want to continue on the panel, or?
I'm in your hands, but
How long have you got?
My time is limited.
How long have you got? Have you got 10, 15 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe I'll ask you one more question in terms of your regional value chains. I know it's a project that's very important to you, but how do we make sure that it's African companies that are part of this regional value chain?
Yeah. When it comes to investment, you do not discriminate. But at the same time, the African companies know Africa better because they live in that environment. And it is natural that there is partnership. Either you can do it if you have the resources, or you can help, or we can help you to attract others that can partner with you. But what is very important is that African companies must participate in this journey. And I think that's what makes sense. That's what can really add value in a sustainable manner. It's not putting in money and leaving tomorrow. We need sustainability, and that's why the African companies become very important. Either you can do it alone, or you can partner with others. And that way, then, you can be assisted in terms of doing it. Thank you.
You spent your early life, let's say, taking international brands into Africa, and the second part of your journey, let's say, making African brands great. So what can we learn from the international brands? What do they get right and we get wrong?
Thank you. I think if you look at from an investment perspective, so for it, to create ideas, to create great brands, you have to invest. And let's talk about investment for 1 minute. So Africa spends about 0.3% in research and development. In research and development, whereas the rest of the world spends about 2.7 as a percentage of the GDP. And if you look in terms of protecting our brands, only 1.8% of Africa accounts for only 1.8% of the trademarks of intellectual property, compared to a country like China, which is like 30-40%. So just on those two areas alone, in terms of if you're going to create Made in Africa excellence, we need to spend money in research and development. I think the third and most important one is they've invested in telling great stories. They know our consumers, they know our citizens better, and they tell better stories about us. We don't spend the money in the research and development. We don't invest in telling stories, and we are much better at that because it's part of our DNA as Africans.
Fantastic. Would you prefer a question, or would you prefer to make your remarks, Excellency?
Well, I think I came here to make a remark.
Okay, so
I didn't come for the panel.
Yeah. Okay, so make the remarks, and then we'll close the panel after your remarks, if we may.
Thank you. Is it on? Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you so much. Dear colleagues, thank you so much. And it's always an honor to welcome you to the launch of 2025 brand Africa 100 at this defining moment in Africa's journey as we seek to reshape our continent's global image and elevate its economic power and cultural vibrancy on this global stage. As we convene here at this historical Africa Hall, the same space where in 1963, as I mentioned, the founders of our continent gathered to chart a path toward a free and united Africa. We do so today to advance the next chapter of Africa's story. Let me begin by commending the leadership of Brand Africa and partners for consistently advancing this vital initiative of excellence, enterprise, and innovation over the last 15 years. I also extend heartiest congratulations to all those brands that have made it into the 2025 ranking. I wish to particularly acknowledge MTN, Dangote Group, M-Pesa, and Ethiopian Airlines for consistently maintaining their distinguished positions among the most admired African brands category, and continuing to set benchmarks in brand leadership, innovation, and continental impact. More than just market leaders, all of you here are ambassadors of Africa's promise, and you define what it means to be proudly African in a competitive global marketplace. Indeed, we are no longer asking the world to change the narrative about Africa. We are taking charge, and we are owning the narrative. Why? Because the evidence is undeniable. Africa is the world's youngest continent with over 70% of its population under the age of 35, a demographic asset with far-reaching implications for sustainable development. A rising middle class is propelling a consumer market projected to surpass $2.2 trillion by 2030. And everywhere you look, Africa's brilliance is on full display. From the creative pulse of Lagos to the tech corridors of Nairobi, from Addis Ababa's green industrial zones to Dakar's digital design studios, Africa is building and branding. And it is imperative that we keep in mind that what defines a brand is not merely a logo or a slogan. An authentic African brand must straddle the embodiment of Africa's stories, culture, and aspirations. Our continent holds over 100 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, from the ancient churches of Rwanda to the ruins of Great Zimbabwe. Far beyond their status as tourist attractions, these heritage sites are powerful brand assets that hold immense potential to boost economic benefits, from cultural tourism to creative content licensing. Significantly, they also reflect Africa's contribution to global civilization. And our host nation, Ethiopia, exemplifies the duality of heritage and economic progress. Yes, it's the land of Lucy, as they always say, but it's also the land of green growth, coffee innovation, and world-class aviation. Across Africa, the branding story is equally diverse and dynamic. Ghana and Ivory Coast lead in cocoa value addition. Kenya has revolutionized the mobile banking. Nigeria's creative industries are global. Rwanda is charting a path in green transformation. South Africa's industrial base continues to anchor the region. However, the question persists: why do so few African brands enjoy global visibility? This is the challenge that we must address. To that end, allow me to outline 5 strategic pathways to integrate Africa's brand into our broader development agenda. First, we must invest in youth-driven innovation and the creative industries. Across the continent, young entrepreneurs are merging tradition with technology to create, for example, digital fashion in Dakar, music platforms in Nairobi, and Afrofuturist art in Ghana. And these must be supported if we have to grow. Second, we must build and scale regional value chains that support authentic African products and services. In this regard, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area provides a historic opportunity to not only industrialize and integrate our markets, but also leverage regional integration to develop brands that are African-made, African-owned, and globally respected. But to do this, we need harmonizing standards, efficient logistics, and a regulatory environment that elevates made in Africa to a mark of quality and pride. Third, we must maintain the African brand in our trade and investment strategies. African embassies, trade missions, and business forums, beyond presenting data, must promote our African stories to investors, tourists, and others. And our diaspora must also be seen as global brand ambassadors and investors in this effort. Fourth, Africa must invest in robust real-time data systems that track consumer sentiment, market perceptions, and brand competitiveness within Africa and globally. In this respect, ECA is ever ready to partner with research institutions and national statistics offices to develop this capacity and support evidence-based branding strategies at the national and regional levels. Fifth and last, we must also establish a Pan-African Creative Innovation Fund, a public-private facility to identify, finance, and globalize Africa's most promising brands across sectors including fintech, fashion, food processing, agribusiness, arts, among others. This fund must also nurture, finance, and scale youth-led enterprises, keeping in mind that these are drivers of growth, of jobs, growth, and global influence. This can be complemented by individual country financial commitments. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the ECA is proud to support this launch because it aligns closely with our mission to promote inclusive industrialization, advance regional integration, and unlock the potential of the African private sector. Crucially, the 2025 ranking is coming at a time when the continent is asserting a stronger voice on the world stage. From hosting the BRICS summit in 2023 to the African Union's call for reparative justice and South Africa's presidency of the G20 in 2025. And this is one opportunity to show the world what we have and what can be done. We will therefore continue to work hand in hand with governments, the African Union, regional economic communities, the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, the youth, the diaspora, and the private sector actors to elevate Africa's visibility and amplify its voice on the global stage to fully unleash Africa's vast brand potential. Later this year, the ECA will convene the African Development Impact Forum, which will bring together researchers, academics, policy makers, and all of you private sector leaders to exchange knowledge and co-create practical policy solutions for the structural transformation and sustainable development in Africa. Together, we can reshape the African narrative and position our continent where it truly belongs. And with that, I have the honor to officially launch the 2025 Brand Africa 100. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Excellency. That was great, and we look forward to being at the Impact Forum and also other great initiatives that you're leading. So I think on the live stream we're out of time, but we can ask a few more questions very quickly to our panelists, if I may. So giving your closing remarks. So maybe we'll start with Anne. Does the success of Ethiopian Airlines help you as an Ethiopian brand? And what is your single biggest challenge in building a strong, internationally recognized brand?
Thank you, Omar, for that question. Yes, absolutely. When I introduce myself and I say I'm an Ethiopian, I'm based in Ethiopia, and I'm running a fashion company, and yes, a lot of people today can say Ethiopian Airlines and they've flown Ethiopian Airlines, especially if they're living on the continent. So it is very helpful. Back in the days when I would introduce myself as an Ethiopian, perhaps it wasn't really a brand, it was more possibly Haile Gebrselassie or our late emperor. So it helps. It helps a lot. Obviously for work as well, with all the trading that we want to do through e-commerce, it does help. Sourcing also from other African countries, which what we do at Africa Mosaic, we source fabrics from other African countries. It does help us a lot as well. To answer to your question about our pain points, I think there are many. I am beginning to see the light. I think it is encouraging to see that there are more and more Africa-founded, Africa-based brands existing today. But I would think if there would be one point that I feel is our biggest challenge is that we don't endorse our local products, made in Ethiopia, made in Africa products. And I think that because it's a massive market that we have here locally, and before we enter the international, the bigger market, I think it is important that we know that we have support locally. I find that not just with fashion and clothing, but also with other products, to the extent that sometimes even some fashion manufacturing companies actually change their label and say made in Italy or made in France or made in other countries when they're actually made right here in Ethiopia. So I think when we start feeling confident and we start endorsing our own products, I think that's when we're going to start seeing designers and especially the creative industry really breaking through, because there is a focus now on artisanal work, our story, new, fresh way of approaching fashion, which is not fast fashion, which is not automated fashion, but it's fashion that's deep-rooted in heritage, in storytelling, and this is our richness, and this is our opportunity now to really sort of rise up to that, but be able to tell it in our own way, and making sure that we can control the narrative. So I think once we start being comfortable with wearing and endorsing local products, then we will start seeing the big change.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So we need more endorsement. I was reading an article. It was with an Indian diplomat. It was an interview, and the Indian diplomat, who was quite old, but said previous generations and elites wanted to imitate the West as a sign of modernity. Today, the continent, he was talking about India, but I think it's relevant to Africa as well, is more confident about being non-Western. And hopefully we're proud to be wearing or consuming our own brands, and proud of our own companies and businesses that we're supporting and helping grow. So Migdal, if I may come to you. So if we look at China, made in China used to be pejorative, and today it's associated with cutting-edge technology. What does made in Ethiopia mean for you and for Ethiopians, and the same, what does made in Africa mean for you in terms of endorsing our own brands and the products that we produce ourselves?
I think two things were the critical factors for people to shift to other brands rather than buying locally made products and African-made products. The first is the essence of creating quality products, and if we manage to bring products of high standard and quality, that's something that would resolve the problem. And the second is the essence of consistency. Making our products come in that consistent manner is one of the biggest challenge. But in the last, I would say, 10 years, there is a significant shift in terms of local brands becoming more pickable in the market as well. So the visibility is better, and the impact that these products are having is by far better. Now, maybe a couple of things that what we could do to make it better and how we could improve it, I could dissect it in a couple of different frameworks. The first is I represent the Ethiopian Marketing Professionals Association, and the reason why we decided to establish the association is to build the capacity of our professionals in terms of making sure that Ethiopian products become more bolder and bigger in the market. But going forward, we have also seen that we are a little bit disconnected from the continent in terms of positioning our products within the continent. And last year, we decided to be part of the African Marketing Confederation, and for us, that is a very bold move, making sure that Ethiopian professionals have access to African content, African products, and African expertise as well. And that creates more synergy amongst the brands within Africa and within Ethiopia. And going forward, I would see more opportunity for Ethiopian brands to be more spotlighted, and at the same time, African brands being more visible and consumed within the Ethiopian context. Another thing that I definitely would agree with His Excellency, Mr. Claver, is everybody is an ambassador, but at the same time, I want to take it a little bit further. Every one of us, there is a Dangote in us. And we all have access to reach thousands of people through the different media platforms that we have. If we could spotlight one brand a week in our different platforms, that would make the brands that we have stronger across the continent. It doesn't mean that it should be from what we consume only, but from what we are exposed to as well. So that could be something that we could utilize, taking personal initiatives in making sure that the brands of Ethiopia and at the same time Africa are bolder and stronger. The other aspect is, I hope, and this is something that I strongly say, I hope next time when there is a show on a TV, different programs that are happening on major events, there is this wrong thing that we do, and I always bold when I speak about it. When we are having a bottled water on the table, we take out the brand labeling, and that is a wrong thing to do. And I'm glad that Cool is on the table as the brand exists. And this goes to the different media agencies, different event organizers. It is okay to have that local brand, having the brand name on the table. That is when we start promoting it. And that would create a lot of buzz amongst the consumers as well. Another thing that I would focus, could be as a solution, is strengthening our agencies. The marketing agencies should also be seeing from this perspective as well. Maybe businesses may not have that insight in terms of how do we make our brands African brands? How do we make it more competitive in the global perspective? But agencies having different experiences working with different industries could be the best support system in making sure that those brands become highlighted as well. And the last thing that I would love to stress is, me as an academician, and there are other academicians as well, is to be bold enough in addressing this topic in how we teach our students and in how we craft the next generation of leaders and the next generation of business owners. Making sure that understanding Ethiopian brand is good, understanding African brand is good, but also making sure that we put it as part of our research works, we put it as part of our examples, and make it easier for people to understand it. We can't go far alone. Yes, we could go fast. There is this beautiful African proverb: you can't go far alone, but you can go fast. But the pursuit of bringing African brands to the spotlight is a long journey. It's not a quick one, it's a long journey. If we want to do that, I strongly suggest and advise, if as industries, as businesses, we come together and tackle the challenge together. When Ethiopian Airlines is spotlighted, it is an African brand. That's how we should embrace it. I may come from a financial sector, I may come from other sectors. I should see it from that angle. And that brotherhood is going to be something that is going to spotlight our brands further. And maybe, just maybe, next year, it's not going to be only Ethiopian Airlines that we're going to see in the top 100. I hope to see more Ethiopian brands and more African brands in the top list. Thank you very much.
Take 2 or 3 questions if someone's got one. I think you just have to press the button to so we can hear your question. Any questions from the floor? Okay, so no questions from the floor, and I haven't been given any signals from the live chat. So let me just summarize very quickly before Tebe takes over. And actually, there's food downstairs, so we can mingle amongst ourselves to ask the questions to our panelists. So, I mean, the messaging that comes from what's been said, and we've said many things today, but ultimately it's about consistency and collaboration. So I think that's one message that came out: deliberate and deliver. So the brands that have succeeded have been deliberate about their strategy, but they've also delivered on their promises. And really what we seem to have seen with Dangote, with Anne's African Mosaic story, is that you need to have that holistic approach to building these brands, sort of an ecosystem approach on the continent. We know our continent better than most. Saying that, we've got certain constraints, and it's for us to overcome them, and hence the vertical and horizontal integration of the different solutions. So Tebe, thank you very much for putting this together, for inviting us all, and for this really interesting conversation. Thank you.
No, thank you, everybody. Thank you to everybody for coming through. Next year is going to be a full hall next year, because we already know the date for next year. So we're going to fill up this hall. We'll be bringing CMOs from all over the continent next year. So we'll have a lot of CMOs, chief communications, CEOs, and chief marketing officers filling up this. We'll be looking at putting together a day or two program to talk about some of these more than just in a panel. And we'll have a grand event next year too. This year was a beautiful start. We wanted to see how we can do this in this great city, in this great country. And it was good to do it in this hall and to do it on our 15th anniversary. I want to thank my good friends, Anna Gedna and Magdalena for joining us here, and my brother Omar always, and my sister Hasna, she's out there in the top running the show, the best event director in this continent that I've met, and every one of you for coming through here. And without people like Omar, our story would not be curated as well as we can. I want to thank the folks who've come, who've flown in from Dangote, who've flown in from South Africa, who've flown in. I think we've got people from M-Pesa. They've left already, from Kenya. So we're grateful for everybody who came through here. And most importantly, it's a congratulations to everybody. I think we should always pat ourselves on the back for this. The difference between this and any other award you'll get is that it's not you patting yourself on the back, it's the citizens, it's the Africans saying that you're on the right path. So for that, I want you guys to give yourself a round of applause. And with that, let's go eat. I'm hungry.
Thank you all.
Where's the food, Omar?
I believe it's downstairs. Well, thank you all who've been watching online as well. Thank you. I believe it's downstairs.
Thank you.